To be honest with you, I don't know what the f is Wall Street actually does. For me, it's just some guy in a suit yapping 100 miles an hour about numbers, yield curves, and basically anything to make you feel stupid and questioning your own intelligence. But that's not the only thing that kept bothering me the most. You see, in 2000, Cisco Systems was the most valuable company in the world. It was a great company with real revenue, and everyone on Wall Street convinced you to buy it. 2 years later, its value dropped down to 88%, and it took 25 years to recover. Did you see where I'm going with this? Fast forward today, we're being told the exact same story about AI and Nvidia. The cycles just keep repeating itself, and just remember its magic word. This time, it would be different. Yeah, right. Meanwhile, the people who actually running these companies are quietly doing something different with their own investment, unlike what they say on screen. And I'm going to prove it to you how innocent you are in this scenario. But first, let me show you how far they'd go to build the narrative based on lies and promises. I have the legitimate proof to show you, so listen carefully. In 1999, the internet is the biggest thing anyone has ever seen. Regular people like teachers, nurses, factory workers are opening investment accounts for the very first time. They're watching the financial news before work and reading reports from the people they think are the smartest minds in the country. And the most familiar name for this was Henry Blodget. Blodget was the head internet analyst at Merrill Lynch, and his name was everywhere: TV, newspapers, and magazines. In 1998, he made a public prediction that Amazon stock would hit $400 a share. 3 weeks later, it actually did. After that, people started treating him like a prophet. So when Blodget put out a strong buy rating on companies like InfoSpace, GoTo.com, and Excite at Home, everyone listened. They put real money in and trust him completely. But here's what blows my mind. In private emails that the government found during its investigation, Blodget was calling those exact same stocks junk. His public rating represent buy, and yet his private opinion said these companies were garbage. Unfortunately, everyone who listened to him learned it the hard way. In 2003, regulators permanently banned Blodget from the securities industry and forced him to pay $4 million to settle the charges. Although he never admitted that he did anything wrong, the damage is far beyond repair. You see, there is a system called spinning. But we're going into the details later, and once you see how it works, you'll understand why a regular people would never stood a chance at that time. And right now, I felt like the cycles might just repeat. The worst part is that Henry Blodget wasn't the only one. A guy named Jack Grubman was doing the exact same thing at a firm called Solomon Smith Barney, except his focus was phone and telecom companies. He published a report upgrading AT&T in 1999, while his private research painted a completely different picture. Regulators found that his reports on multiple companies contained what they called exaggerated and unwarranted claims with no reasonable basis. He was permanently banned from the industry and paid $15 million. So how does this happen? How do the most trusted names in finance end up lying to millions of people? The answer comes down to who was actually paying their salary. Analysts like Blodget and Grubman were supposed to be independent. Their job was to look at companies and give investors an honest opinion, but they worked inside the same firms that also ran investment banking operations. Think of it like this. Imagine a movie critic tells you a new film is a must-see. You trust them, so you buy a ticket. But what you don't know is that the movie studio is also paying that same critic millions of dollars to help them sell tickets. If the critic says the movie is actually garbage, the studio stops paying them. So the critic has $1 million reason to keep smiling and telling you to buy, even when they know the movie is a flop. That's exactly what was happening. The banks were getting paid by the companies to sell their stock while also pretending to give you independent advice. They weren't analysts. They were salespeople in suits. Now, if a person lying on media is bad, what comes next is worse, because Blodget and Grubman were only the tip of the iceberg. Behind them, the banks had quietly built a whole separate system to take care of their real friends, and the regular investors are just outsiders. That system was called spinning. And it basically worked like this. When a hot company was about to start selling its stock to the public for the first time, banks controlled who got to buy shares at the original low price before it jumped. Instead of giving regular people a fair shot, banks like Goldman Sachs and Credit Suisse First Boston were quietly handing those early shares to the CEOs of other companies they wanted future business from. The CEO got free money on day one. The bank got loyalty. And by the time a normal person could buy in, the price had already exploded. You weren't late because you were slow. You were late because the game has started without you. Here's the thing nobody talks about. A great company and a great investment are not the same thing. You can buy a perfectly good business and still lose almost everything. I was looking at these two charts about the Cisco and Nvidia while researching this video, and it's just crazy how much they look like twins. This tweet is describing the situation really well. It is not unreasonable to assume that at some point in time, Nvidia will experience a collapse in demand, either due to the entry of competitors or some other reason. I'm going to show you what happened next back in those days. It was a massive dead zone where the stock dropped 88% and stayed there for decades. And the scariest part, it didn't care how good the company performance was. In 1999, all you had to do was add .com to your company name and your stock price would jump. I'm not even kidding. Investors didn't care if you had real customers or a real business. That word alone was enough. Companies were literally just renaming themselves with .com at the end and watching their stock go up, even when nothing else about the business changed at all. So today, that magic word is AI. A company called FactSet tracks what the biggest companies in America say during their earnings calls. An earnings call is basically a meeting where a company's CEO gets on the phone with investors every few months and says, hey, here's how much money we made, and here's what we're doing next. FactSet found that 331 of the 500 biggest companies in America mentioned AI during their most recent round of these calls. To put that in perspective, the normal average over the last 5 years was only 149 companies. So the number basically doubled overnight. But here's the part that doesn't make any sense. The companies that mentioned AI the most actually saw smaller stock price gains than the companies that didn't mention it at all. The hype isn't even working anymore, but they keep saying it anyway. So who's actually making money here? Jensen Huang is the CEO of Nvidia. If you don't know the name, Nvidia makes the computer chips that power most AI systems right now. Huang is probably the most famous tech executive in the world at this moment. He goes on stage and says things like, in the last 40 years, nothing has been this big. It's bigger than the PC, bigger than mobile, and it's going to be bigger than the internet. Around the same time he was saying that, Huang filed paperwork to sell 6 million shares of Nvidia stock. At the time, those shares were worth over $800 million. His CFO, the company's top finance officer, filed her own plan to sell another $67 million worth of shares around the same time. Now, let me get this straight for you. This is completely legal. Executives use something called a 10b5-1 plan, which means they set up a selling schedule in advance so nobody can accuse them of using secret insider information. So, just think about that picture for a second. The loudest voice telling you that AI is the greatest thing in human history is also quietly filing paperwork to sell hundreds of millions of dollars of his own stock. That's worth noticing, because we've seen this before. Blodget was the loudest voice telling you to buy in 1999. Huang is the loudest voice telling you to buy now. And both of them, at the very same moment they were saying that publicly, were moving their own money in a different direction. And then there are the AI startups. A company called Builder.ai raised hundreds of millions of dollars, promising investors it was using cutting-edge AI to build apps. When it collapsed, it came out that most of the AI-powered work was actually being done by regular human engineers. The AI was the pitch, not the product. Perplexity AI, a well-known AI search tool, was reportedly spending 164 cents for every single dollar it brought in. OpenAI, the most famous AI company on Earth and the one behind ChatGPT, was reportedly spending about $2 for every $1 it made. Mistral AI, a European AI company, raised money at a price tag roughly 100 times its actual yearly revenue. These aren't small bumps in the road. These are pets.com with a better logo. And yes, Nvidia is genuinely a great company. Its chips actually work. People actually need them. And the money coming in is real. Just like Cisco was a genuinely great company back in 2000. Cisco stock grew over 3,000% through the late 1990s as the internet took off, and the business behind it was real. Then the bubble burst and the stock dropped to 88%. It took 25 full years to finally close at a new record high. Being great didn't protect you from paying a bubble price. That's the part nobody wants to talk about. So how do you tell the difference between the next Google and the next pets.com? I'm going to give you 3 specific questions you can ask about any stock in 30 seconds to know if you're buying a real business or just funding someone else's exit. I will explain it later. So, I spent years of my life thinking that this has to be an elaborate joke on myself, that I am way too imbecile to acknowledge what's really going on. Somehow that feeling is important to be used against me. But now that I've seen the emails, spinning deals, and the insider selling, I'm kind of furious now. And honestly, you should be too. Because all that advanced jargon and strong buy ratings aren't just harmless financial noise. They're a mental trap designed to make you feel like it's necessary for you to hand over your money toward the people who are literally calling your investments crap behind your back. But what are you actually going to do with all of this? Because I don't want you to walk away from this video being scared to touch anything. That's not the point. You don't need to predict whether AI keeps running or falls apart next year. In fact, nobody can tell. What you can control is whether you're holding on to something that you actually understand when things get messy. So here's my personal checklist to see if the investment is worth investing. First, is the person on stage saying, "This changes everything," quietly selling their own shares at the same time? Because Jensen Huang went on stage and said, "AI is bigger than the internet," and then filed paperwork to sell over $800 million of his own stock. I don't think that's a confidence. That's a guy quietly heading for the exit while pointing you toward the door. Second, is the company spending way more than it's actually making? OpenAI was spending about $2 for every $1 it brought in. Perplexity was spending even more. If you ran your household like that, you'd be broke in a month. A real business doesn't work that way. Third, can you actually explain what the company does and how it makes money using simple terms in one sentence? Not the pitch, not the vision, just what does it sell and who keeps paying for it? If you can't answer that, you don't own a business, you own a bet. And once you realize that 3 plain questions are all you actually needed, they're not secret. Anyone could have figured it out sooner. The fact that nobody did, it's actually concerning. That's why I made this video. If you find this video valuable, please push that like button and consider joining the community. Thank you.